You like it.
We'll call the meeting to order. If you would, please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, there you go.
Mrs. Johnson, if you would call roll, please.
Mr. Stewart?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Harrison?
Here.
Mrs. Petrie? Here. Mr. Stevenson?
Here.
Mrs. Welker?
Here.
All right, next I need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's public hearing. Mr. Harrison and second, Mr. Stevenson. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Looks like 7-0. There we go. 7-0. Motion passes. Okay, so thank you all for coming out tonight. We're going to listen to you all. This is basically, it's a public hearing, so we're going to listen to you all on your thoughts and ideas on nepotism as it relates to policy BBFA. We have a second sign-up sheet in the back. We weren't sure how many people were going to, number one, show up, how many were going to want to speak. Currently have 8 people signed up. I want to give everybody as much time as possible to speak, but I'm sure you all don't want to be here till midnight, and neither do I. So I would like to limit it initially to 10 minutes per person. So we'll start with that. And I will give you a little notice at what, 3 minutes? Yeah, I'll give you a notice at 5 minutes, 3, 1, and then I'll let you know when the time is up. So, so with that said, our first person signed up is Mr. Dale Tebow. Dale.
I didn't know signing up first meant I had to speak first, but
We like overachievers.
I just wanted to share some thoughts I had about this issue. I read it in the paper, some of the things about the policy and what's happened. And I was on the board here for 19 years, and during that time we had, as far as I knew, we had no problems with employees who were related working together within the system. We had many cases of that. It was not ever an issue. That my wife was a teacher while I was on the school board here, and I just made very sure that anything related to her or that associated with her in any way, that I abstained from a vote, and made sure that my influence did not do anything to benefit her. And I think that was what most everybody who had relatives working in the district did. Hiring or promoting friends or family isn't, in my opinion, isn't necessarily unfair if the person is qualified. And my premise that I would like to stress tonight is that whoever we hire for a position has to be the best qualified person for that position. No matter how many people apply, we have to go through the applications, we have to pick the best person. Our school's job, and I say our because I still substitute. I was a teacher for many years and have been around education for a long time. So the purpose of a school is to educate the kids. And you have to pick the best people to do that. Whether they're related to somebody else in the system is secondary to, are they qualified to do the job. So I think if you had that goal in mind, that you approach. I did a little bit of reading on the internet, just going through and looking up nepotism and trying to find some stuff. And I found two things that I want to share, which are one from Ohio State, and they say the basic criteria for appointment and promotion of all university faculty, staff, and student employees will be appropriate qualifications and performance. And then they went on to say selection of personnel will be based on job-related qualifications. Relationship by family, marriage, or domestic partnership will not preclude hiring or promoting or transferring as long as the individual meets and fulfills the appointment standards. Family members whose qualifications rank each of them first for the positions under consideration may be employed so long as neither family member is immediately responsible for or influences any employment action. So basically what Ohio State is saying is you look for the best person and you make sure that that person is the one that you put in the position. Pacific Lutheran University says relationship by family or marriage constitutes neither an advantage nor a deterrent to appointment by the university, provided that the individual meets the appropriate standards for the position to be filled, and provided that the individual will not be in the chain of supervision of a spouse, family member, or person with whom the individual or the individual is dating. So the Lutheran University says, again, best qualified person, and then not to put that person in a chain of command where they have a family member directly responsible for supervising them. One danger that I see of hiring relatives or friends is that nepotism decreases job satisfaction and morale for all the employees except for the people who are benefiting by the hiring. You get a decrease in job satisfaction, you get an increase in intention to quit job and likelihood of talking negatively. Believe me, I've been in teachers' lounges many times, and I know that when teachers get in teacher's lounge, they know that there's not an administrator listening, they'll talk, okay? And as a teacher in another district, I seldom heard talk about hiring friends or relatives, as long as they were the best qualified person. What I did hear talk about was creating a job or a situation where, hey, we have a relative that we want to hire, and then we create a job, or we force a situation where that person can become an employee of the school. That's wrong, okay? And I think the key to all of that is communication. No matter what approach you take, there has to be good communication between you guys and the administrators, between the administrators and the rest of the staff. I remember one time when there was a lot of talk in the district where I worked, where it appeared that a position was created just to give a job to a relative or a friend, and that hurt morale of people. It hurt job performance. It hurt the education for the kids. It hurt a lot of situations. Because when people are upset, productivity decreases. And people get upset when they're not communicated with, when they perceive even that something is being done under the table. Keep it above board. Whatever you do, let people know what you're doing and why. And always pick the best person for the job. Because sometimes even the appearance of nepotism can have negative effects. So I may want to get back up after other people talk and say something else, but basically those are the things that are important to me. Pick the best person that's going to be the best for the kids in the district, no matter who that person is.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. Next on the list is Sarah Saharsky.
Good evening. I thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this. 2031, that is when my youngest child will graduate. So my vested interest is the education of my children and that they have the best environment. I second what Mr. Tebow said, is that I want the best qualified candidates in this district, teaching, support staff, community members, administrators, the people that are interacting with my children and the children in this district, I think deserve, and as taxpayers, our expectation is that we are providing the best environment for our children. I second the statements of Mr. Tebow, and that the overall effects that nepotism can have, whether your feeling is right or wrong, if not done correctly, if you do not have a policy, if you don't follow those policies and make sure things are above, the perception can have an effect on the morale and the culture. I'm very concerned with the amount of turnover we had this year, and I'm too, like Mr. Tebow, active and involved in the community. I'm active and involved in my children's school, and feel that there's a direct correlation in some of the actions that have occurred since July of 13, and some of those repercussions, we are now seeing the effects on our children, and that's not acceptable. On September 26, 2013, during the Board of Education meeting, the Board of Education went into closed session to approve changes to policy BBFA, and specifically to language regarding nepotism. The process of changing the policy in closed session violated the Sunshine Law, and therefore should make the policy changes null and void. We've been told various reasons and versions to attempt to justify the change in closed session. Simply, policy BBFA should not have changed in closed session and was a direct violation. Additionally, communication regarding that change, exiting closed session, was never communicated or documented in the Board of Education's agenda or minutes to reflect a change that occurred. The acts that took place were a violation and did not present a transparent, open dialogue with the community. The change in policy was not communicated to staff until questioning in May of 2014, upon which then information became disseminated to the community about the change and subsequent actions that were in direct relation. The policy in place on policy implementation and dissemination specifically states an essential job responsibility of the superintendent and administrative staff is to assist the board in timely review and revision of the policy so that policies support the best academic practices, address district concerns, and accurately guide the district's operations. Superintendent is also responsible with the assistance of administrative staff for developing and implementing policy procedure forms to carry out the directives and making sure those policies are disseminated. So when that action was taken, there was no dissemination of communication. So I urge you to know that I think it's important to understand that timeline, because it wasn't that all of a sudden in June just because of the hiring, but rather that's also upon the time when the community and staff realized that the policy had changed because we were not transparent. A special meeting was then held on June 5th, 2014, in which policy BBFA, board member conflict of interest and financial disclosure, was placed on the agenda. Community stakeholders, including parents, teachers, community members, and business leaders, attended, just as people have here tonight. Numerous stakeholders were prepared and ready to address the board. Unfortunately, it was the will of the board, president, and the board to not allow anyone to speak. There was specifically a request by a board member to allow people to speak, and we were told we could not because it was a special meeting. However, we were conducting official board business in that meeting, as which changing policies. We then went on to not allow anyone to speak. So here now, a year later, there were people concerned. So while it was coming back up because it was on the agenda, this isn't because people are out. No one has had their opportunity to express their concern. So I applaud you for giving this opportunity tonight. The way in which that meeting and subsequent violation of the change in policy, not once, but then again twice, violated the policy and procedure. Because that meeting would go on to have the policy unadopted and then readopted, still violating the policy on policy adoption. Policy adoption says that board present at a legally constituted meeting in which the proposed policy or amendment has been included on the agenda and described in writing. To permit time for studying of all new policy or amendments to policies, they are to provide an opportunity for interested parties to react to proposed policies or amendments and be presented as an agenda item in the following sequence. The PIN, then first consideration, informal item, second consideration, which is discussion, and then action. None of those steps took place. We undid a policy and we redid a policy without giving anyone opportunity to react, discuss, or follow your own policy, nor was the policy committee given the opportunity to review. The Board of Education and our leadership are setting the example for our students, staff, and community. As leaders of the district, if you cannot follow policies, how do we expect our students, staff, and community members to do the same? I urge you to reflect on the context, justification, and manner in which that policy occurred. To help begin repairing the distrust in the community, to work in a transparent and open manner, the policy should revert back to the original intent of the policy. Policy should not be changed for special interest of individuals. Additionally, I would like to urge you as well to kind of you can do a simple Google search, look across the country at the effects that nepotism has in any workplace, but specifically in education. There are numerous states in our country that have enacted state statutes that actually come down. The state of Alabama is just one I can reference. It's been a heated discussion and topic in the state of Missouri, just currently in this last legislative session, and actually a local representative in our area. Those have been discussions because of some of the mistrust that can happen. So I urge you to make sure that our business is being done for the best interest of our students and staff, not for the interest of individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Renee Saharsky. Ms. Saharsky.
I think what concerned me the most about the policy change was we were given, one reason was given to the public for the change, but in the June board meeting, Mr. Lewis indicated that he and another board member had been in the community of our present superintendent before he was hired and had discussed with community members about his wife working in the district, and there'd been no problem. And so consequently, they meaning the board, saw no problem with her getting a job and working here. I feel like the policy was changed not because it needed to be changed, but it was changed so that it would there would be a job opportunity for our present superintendent's wife. And then subsequently, a job was created. There was no job opening, so a job was created for her. And the money we spent on that job could have been spent for other educational purposes in our district. We could have hired a math teacher, a reading specialist. We didn't do that. And instead, we ended up with a third instructional coach when we already had two. This, I feel was wrong. It was a misuse of school funds. It did create a lot of mistrust in the district. And going back to what Mr. Tebow said, you don't create jobs for a family member of someone currently in the district. And I think, in my personal opinion, that's what happened here. And I urge you to go back, re-examine what you did as a board in changing the policy, and I urge you to reinstitute it as it was meant to be originally. Thank you.
Next on the list is Dr. Jim Saharsky.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, John. I want to reflect just a little bit on what was said by my wife. I understand, and I may need to be corrected because, like Renee, I've heard several different versions of what transpired that created a position that ended up with the superintendent's wife being appointed to a position in the school district over numerous individuals that were interested in the position. Mr. Tebow mentioned the best qualified. Well, it depends on how you determine best qualified, but what I want to focus on is that if the board members went down to Pierce City, and I know they did, and came back and made their recommendations to the board, but if there was some discussion, I happened to be a member of the board at the time, and it did not occur while I was continuing to serve on the board. And if it occurred between March, when the superintendent was hired, and July, then it was inappropriate because there was no standing for that to have been discussed at any point by the board in any session. If it occurred after July 1st, and apparently from the records, the process to change the policy began immediately. If a mistake was made by thinking it would be okay, it meant we hadn't read our own policies or digested what those policies meant. Now that creates a real problem, because all the subsequent effort to cover what we did by redoing the policies, by not reporting them in the minutes as is required by the policies, violated our own policies. But we compounded that by changing the policies without even going through the review process for the policies, which board members and staff members sat on, and that was supposed to be a standard process. Any new policy revisions were to be reviewed by internal committees, so that when you negotiated with the teachers and the staff, that those were a part of the ongoing process of our agreement for a year, that you agreed that you would share any changes that would be in effect for the next year unless there was an emergency clause. Now, as far as I can understand, there was no emergency clause. If it was discussed inappropriately, it was done by procedural error or lack of knowledge. Mr. McCarthy indicated that he thought, he was told it was a syntax change. Well, a syntax change turned into $100,000 worth of expenditures that could have been applied to the children of our district in instructional opportunities in math, reading, or supplies, materials, even if it was under a title program. But it didn't happen like that. And that causes a great deal of concern for a person who was on the board that had no knowledge at all that this was transpiring. Or if it happened after I was off the board, then it's a different situation entirely. Still inappropriate, but a different situation. Now, whenever you didn't go to the policy committee to even review it, and the board minutes do reflect that some board members objected to that process, but the board, in its haste, changed those policies because it was requested, demanded, whatever, I'm not sure. But it's caused a great deal of concern and distrust. And the lack of transparency with the process that has now taken 2 years to have this hearing and to have people willing to speak out about it. A comment was made that only a minority of people are concerned. Well, that's not what I hear. There isn't anybody that I speak to that thinks that the process is not flawed. And that is going to be a real problem to mend that thought process in the community, to let people understand that everybody thinks that the most important product in this community is the welfare of our children, and that every decision, no matter how fast it's made or how slow and how time-consuming it is, that the focus is the children of the community, the only people that matter. Not a job for my relatives, not a job for your relatives, not a job for anyone's friends, nor a position, nor an activity. It's for every child in this community that we value. And as a grandparent, I've got more time than I had with my own children. And the value that I place on the education of my grandchildren cannot even be measured. I do thank the board for giving us an opportunity to at least share with you our feelings. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Dr. Charles. Next on the list is Dennis Bradley. Mr. Bradley.
Well, this is like a breath of fresh air to me. I think all of you know how I stand about nepotism. I was the first one that probably started complaining about it as far back as 2 years, shortly after he came into office. He calls it a grievance that I filed about nepotism. And it was, I guess, in a sort. I just had a concern that it was getting out of hand. It didn't really fix itself. It got worse. I understand now why he was against me bringing it to him. And it's simply because of the fact he had his own agenda. And I'm sorry, but you know, I care about this school district. I care about it a lot. But I wonder how many of you out here are not employed at the Hillsboro district, and how many, and not related to somebody here. Raise your hand. It's probably a third to two-thirds, I would say. But that's part of the problem, because the school board runs the meeting. If the public doesn't get involved, they pass their own agenda, they get what they want, they don't have to answer to anybody, it just goes on and on and on. One of these members up here was on a board, on the hiring committee, or the superintendent's wife. I was told by this individual that every time they had 4 or 5 people, that they would push those resumes out there as a suggestion for hire. I heard that somebody pushed that back and said that's not the ones we want, this is the one we want. She got hired. It happened to be his wife. You say that nepotism, if you control it, it's not that bad. The problem, you can't control it. You can't be everywhere at the same time. And even afterwards, people, they retire, their relative gets their job. Now tell me that's not favoritism. This is the wrong thing to do for the school district. I agree with you 100%. The kids come first. I don't see it. I've been coming to these school board meetings for quite a while. Rarely do I see the kids pushed ahead of their agenda. There's been a lot of changes. A lot of people lost their jobs. Favoritism. I'm tired of it. I tried to run. I tried to do the best I could to get on here. I've got some alliances. I could make a difference. The NEA is responsible for the 2 members up here that are related to people right now over this last election. They're the ones recommended to hire these people. They knew they had relatives here, and it continues. The NEA is not a union. It's an organization. But what they want to do is they want to put their people in charge so that they can get the teachers, the tenured teachers, in position to keep getting them more. They're already voting themselves more. Don't think they ain't. But what we need is people to have nothing to do with the board. I don't have a relative up here. I don't have a child that goes to school up here. I wanted to see it for the school district. I used to work here, most of you know that. And when I brought this issue to him, and I literally, they targeted me for bringing it to their doorstep. I didn't need this job. I quit. I went to another district so that I could attend these board meetings and run for board. And every year we have an election. One of these days I'm going to make it. But until you quit hiring teachers and that, and especially, how many teachers we got now are somebody that's related to a teacher up here? So all of these board members have an agenda. You know, it's in my favor if I vote to get my wife a raise. Or it's my favor to get my daughter a raise. Or my son a raise. You gotta stop. It's running the school district broke. You can't operate a poor school district with the kind of money that they desire. The sub-teachers are underpaid. You know, they can't even get a job up here unless they know somebody or are related to somebody. The staff members, the bus drivers, the cooks, all that. They go for years without raises. Do the teachers?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
Yes, we do.
All right, I'm just throwing it out there. But I know teachers
They
teachers
do.
make a whole lot more than a lot of staff members. And I worked there 2 years, and I never saw a penny. And I mean, I'm not saying I want a raise, or if I was working here, I'd want a raise. What I care about is our school district going broke. I want to see the kids promoted. I want to see programs for them. But you can't do it if you keep spending money. And you can't do it if you keep taking people out of positions they had for years. Or you can't do it if during the hiring process somebody stains it by saying, I want this person hired. And they're a fear for their job, so okay, we'll hire that person. Once one person does it, whether it's at the bottom or the top, it opens up a floodgate. You gotta stop. And that's why I get aggravated. I don't have anything to gain. I didn't do this. I didn't quit my job and leave to make it better for everybody for nothing. I don't care about, my tax dollars are at stake here also. Every time they get a raise, taxes go up. Think about it. But I'm just, this is why everybody up here needs to be scrutinized more. And the NEA stepping in at the last minute, 3 days before the election and supporting the two.
Who are you talking about?
Yes.
The NEA. They had a newspaper ad in there supporting two of the candidates. Go look.
Please allow Mr. Bradley to speak.
Okay,
He's the
thank
one
you.
with the floor. You're
Okay.
under 3 minutes now, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, but I've been waiting a good time to address this board, because normally you can't address it because they don't reply to you. They say it's a sunshine law. That's a baloney. You can respond to people. You don't have to, but you can respond to them through the sunshine law. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Next on the list is Deborah Paget.
That would be me.
Ms. Paget.
Hi, good evening, guys. I'm a retired member of the NEA. A professional organization. I'm a lifelong retired member of the NEA, so hello. I am a retired educator, taught for 34, 33, a long time. 34-ish. In the Northwest Arwen School District. I've lived in the Hillsboro School District all that time and paid taxes here all that time. I am blessed to have a great niece that is attending Hillsboro Primary. I've been very pleased with her education in that time period by Mrs. Lehman, who happens to be related to Miss Petrie. It's like public record. I'm not saying anything y'all don't know. But the point isn't what I am. The point is what is perceived by the community that this Board of Education is doing. That's the issue. I've heard many people up here quote board policy, and I agree with everything they've said. I'm not going to restate it. That when I heard that something was done in executive session that should have been done in an open meeting, I said, what? Because even though I have not attended Hillsboro school board meetings, I attended a heck of a lot of them at Northwest. A lot. And I know how the organization of a school board should be run and what you can and can't do in executive session. So anytime you do something in executive session that shouldn't be done there, the public thinks, well, what are they up to? They're doing something shady. I'm not saying that's what happened at all, but that's the perception. And unfortunately, in the state of Missouri, the school district is not getting the money it needs to operate. I know that. So that means that at some point in time, this school board is going to have to vote for a tax increase. Bad words, but it's the reality of what you guys are dealing with. Now, unfortunately, there's a perception in the community that there are inappropriate things being done on the school board. Why would I vote to spend my hard-earned tax money on a retired salary for that to occur? So even though everything you've done may have been above board and with the best of intentions, that is not the perception. And perception is reality. I was a counselor too. So that's what you're dealing with in the community. I am a volunteer in the district. I received the Hawk Pride Award, I believe, or the Hawk. I've got a big bird sitting in my Sorry, it's like this big. It's huge for my volunteering to help feed the poor children or the children that don't get food over the weekend. That's what I do with the backpack program, along with my friend in the audience who's kind of ducking right now. But that's my concern, is for these children, for my great niece that I think she'll graduate, I don't know, it's not 2031, but it's a long time from now. She's in first grade. So I want the best possible education for her. I want you to use the money in the most appropriate way that you can, getting her the best education she can under the constraints that you're given by the state of Missouri. So that's all I think I got to say. Thank you.
Sid. Next on the list is Brandy Armstrong. Ms. Armstrong.
Ms. Paget, go Lions. I knew I recognized you. I'm not going to sound as rehearsed as some others because I did not plan on speaking tonight, but I do want to thank the board for allowing these meetings to be taped and posted online. Although this is only the second time you've seen me, I've watched every single meeting that's posted. I've listened to them very, very, very closely. And, you know, I've got to say, I'm a single mom of 5 kids. Wow. I am shocked at how I feel the board doesn't have my kids, number one. I listen to people nickel and dime over hiring a reading specialist, but yet quickly get a first and a second on something that doesn't have anything to do with my kids. And that's really upsetting, because I understand that you guys are not paid. You are in a volunteer position, and I thank you for that, because you're taking a lot of time away from your own life. But you were trusted by people like me to vote things that are putting my kids. I'm letting you speak for me as a mom, as a parent. And I don't feel like that's happening. I feel like somebody's agenda is being carried up and up and up because somebody's scratching somebody's back. And that's really upsetting. It's heartbreaking, because I do love Hillsboro. I went to Northwest, but whenever I came here, I was thrilled. A small town, great people. It's only been this past year that I feel all of this policy changing behind closed doors where no one knew. It has just put so much skepticism in everybody's thoughts. And it's not just amongst the parents. The kids are feeling it too. There's horrible morale. I have a high school, well, I have one that just graduated from high school, and I have one who's going to be a junior. And I'm telling you, these high schoolers, these are people. They get it. They're not little kids anymore. They know what's going on. They know the controversy in high school. There was a principal that was let go last year that I urge you board members to research what was going on when he was let go. Because I'm telling you, he was an awesome, awesome man. And it was horrible to take him out of our school kids' lives. It really was. The nepotism policy, I know I'm rambling, but it all kind of comes full circle to that. I urge you board members who us parents have trusted to reinstate the nepotism policy that has worked. It was established for a reason. It was changed to accommodate somebody else. Reinstate it. Let's see, is there anything else that I have to say? I guess that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. All right, next on the list is, Doctor, I was going to put those back there in case somebody else decides. Roland Evans. Mr. Evans.
Thank you. I'd actually like to address the taxpayers. First of all, if we were going to vote tonight and you had a relative on the school, or in the school district, who could vote if you sustained from voting? So we've elected 7 people, and 2 are going to run your board. Because everybody else has got to sustain from voting because they have a relative in the district. So why even have a school board? I got 2 people running my school board. Probably the right to. Nepotism is more than relative. When you have administrators going on vacation with other administrators, taking care of each other, it's more than being related. You know, you had a past superintendent that vacationed with some of the select people. So you don't think there's a little favoritism going on there? Or running a company while he's working for the school district. So you got to look at it for more than just who are they related to. It's the behind the scenes. If they're down there cutting a deal in Podunk, Arkansas, you know, that's a problem. You know, we've got an employee that drives from Cape Girardeau to run our transportation department. You've been out of a job, would you think of going to Cape Girardeau to get a job? Drive from Hillsboro to Cape? How do you think he got here? Think he was just spinning the globe? Goes, I think I'll get a job in Hillsboro. So you got to ask yourself, how did he end up here? So that's nepotism. That's more than who I'm related to. So that's all I got to say. But you got to look at it that way. I got 2 school board members that can actually take care of anything that's related to employees. So why have 7? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Next is Mary Stevenson. Mrs. Stevenson.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to address the board tonight, but I feel a little bit compelled to. There's just a few things I want to touch on. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not part of NEA. And I've worked here for 10 years before my husband was elected, but thank you for that.
Didn't say you was.
I am a parent in this district. I have 3 children in this district. I am a taxpayer in this district. I am a teacher in this district. One of the things that Mr. Tebow addressed with the issue of nepotism is the mistrust that can come among staff members. And I have seen that firsthand. The reason why this room is not packed tonight and the reason why we did not need to move to the gymnasium is because so many staff members are concerned about coming here tonight. And they are concerned that there will be a target on their back. I am not the only one who feels that way. That mistrust is very evident in our school district among many of our staff members. I cannot convey enough and stress to you enough how evident that is among staff members. And when our superintendent is walking the halls and shaking hands and knocking on our doors, we're not going to tell him because he's our boss. But I'm telling you 7 because you're his boss. And you're the only ones who can do something about it. You 7. And I implore you to do something about it. I implore you to. My children are counting on all 7 of you. Every single one of you. That means you have to be here at board meetings. It means you have to be present and you have to vote your conscience every time. I can think of a multitude of things that we could have spent money on from our Title V funds that were used to pay for Mrs. Corman's salary. As a parent who volunteers in the primary, because I also have had 2 children and now a 3rd come through my building, the parent, what's the name of our group? Guardian Hawks. The Guardian Hawks, thank you. I'm fired up right now. The Guardian Hawks have been working themselves to the bone to raise money for an all-inclusive playground. We have 1 playground, and it's fabulous, but it's not enough to accommodate all of our students, especially our students with special needs. We have 1 swing that suffices for our students with special needs with wheelchairs and walkers. That's not enough. We're having bingos and trivia nights, and we're doing everything we can to raise money on the backs of our own parents, 50% of which can't afford to pay for their children's lunches. Yep. We don't have what we need in our building. In order for me to have $100 or $60 it was this year to purchase things for my classroom, for my students in my classroom, I worked at the primary bazaar, which was put on by primary staff. I have to work for that, for students in my classroom to have that money. So please don't think that teachers make this gigantic boatload of money, because we don't. And I spend most of what I make, what I don't spend on my family, I spend in my classroom on my students. Another reason why this room is not packed tonight is because 2 years ago when this issue was brought up, we weren't allowed to speak. If 2 years ago, or even last summer, you'd let your community speak, then you would have heard everyone's opinions. And here it is a year later, and you're finally listening to people. That's not okay. There's no excuse for that. I don't know why we were shut down last summer and why we weren't allowed to talk, but you cannot do that. Not only do you not have mistrust now among your staff, you have mistrust from all of the representatives in your community who are voting for you, who are paying your salaries, and are paying the taxes that make us run. My last thing, getting back to our staff and the issue of mistrust, is my concern as a staff member and as a parent in terms of the teacher turnover. We are losing great educators. Yes. Over and over. We've been losing them for 2 years now, and it is not okay. My children are suffering because of that, and that's not okay with me. They're young. They can't be here to speak out tonight, and I will always speak out for them on their behalf. And I am going to always address all 7 of you whenever I need to, because I'm the only one who can speak up for my children. So I implore you, put this policy back in place. We need to have a district where staff members feel they can trust, and they don't have a target on their back. They don't want to be afraid that they're going to lose their job if they come to a meeting and voice their concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Dr. Isaacson, would you see if there's any other? Nope. Okay, that concludes everybody that is signed up to speak. We thank you all for taking time out of your evening to come and voice your opinions and to come and listen. And I'm sure we will be talking about this in the next meeting for sure, and maybe the next several. So thank you very much, and we are adjourned.